A leopard enters the village and carries a newborn. What happens next is unbelievable. The sun had not yet risen over the small village of Raniket, nestled in the shadows of the Himalayan foothills. The night still clung to the fields and huts like an old blanket, damp and unsettling. A hush fell over everything, the kind of silence that wasn't peaceful but eerie, like the earth itself was waiting for something to happen. Inside a dimly lit hut, Mina, a young mother in her mid-20s, held her newborn son close to her chest. The baby was only 3 weeks old, and though he had spent many nights crying, tonight he slept like a feather resting in the wind. Mina was finally able to breathe, her head resting against the cool mud wall. Her husband, Ravi, was a farmer and had gone out early to the fields. The faint glow of dawn began to creep through cracks in the wooden door. The silence outside felt heavy. Then it happened. A low, guttural growl broke the stillness. It was distant at first, like something stirring far away. But then the growl grew closer, rumbling deep in the earth, vibrating in Mina's chest. Her eyes shot open. She froze. Outside, something moved, something big. The village dogs, who usually barked at anything, were dead silent. A shadow passed across the doorway, casting the dim room into a darkness so thick that Mina's heart began to race. A leopard, the thought hit her like ice water. She bolted upright, her mind struggling to focus. Holding her sleeping son tightly, she crept to the door and peeked through the crack. At first, she saw nothing but empty fields and thick, unmoving trees. But then her breath caught, there it was. A leopard, its body sleek and golden, stalked across the field like liquid shadow. Its muscles rippled beneath its spotted coat, eyes glowing in the weak morning light. Mina felt her stomach drop. It was moving toward the huts, its head low, tail flicking. Her hands trembled. Leopards were not uncommon in Raniket. People had often spoken of sightings near the jungle edge. But in the village? So close? It was unheard of. And this one didn't seem to be hunting livestock, it had another purpose. Suddenly, the door creaked. Mina turned sharply, her heart pounding, but it was too late. The leopard was already there, standing in the doorway. Its yellow eyes locked on hers. Time seemed to stop. Then, in a blur of motion, the leopard leaped forward. Mina screamed, a blood-curdling cry that shattered the morning silence, but before she could react, the leopard snatched the baby in its powerful jaws. It happened so fast that it felt unreal, like a nightmare. The creature bounded out of the hut, the newborn still wrapped in his cloth, and vanished into the shadows of the trees. Mina fell to the ground, sobbing hysterically. Villagers heard her cries and rushed to her hut, their lanterns cutting through the darkness. "What happened?" someone shouted. Mina could barely speak, pointing toward the forest. "The leopard took my son." The crowd erupted into chaos. Men grabbed sticks, torches, and farming tools. Women sobbed and held their own children close. In the chaos, one voice rose above the rest, Ravi, Mina's husband, who had just returned. His face was white with terror. "Where is he? Where is he? They took him." Mina cried. "The leopard, it took him." Ravi's knees buckled, his head spinning. The villagers began shouting, "It's too late. He's gone. No one survives a leopard attack. We need to kill that beast." But Ravi refused to listen. His son was still alive. He could feel it. "I will find him," Ravi whispered, his voice shaking with grief and determination. "I will bring my son back." The men began preparing a search party, their lanterns glowing like fireflies against the darkened jungle. Little did they know, what lay ahead was beyond imagination, a story that would echo for generations. The villagers fanned out with sticks, torches, and rifles, their voices calling out as they plunged into the dense jungle. Ravi led the group, his eyes blazing with desperation. The thought of his infant son in the jaws of a wild predator haunted him. "Follow the tracks," a villager yelled. Someone had spotted the faint imprint of paw marks in the soft mud. They were large, terrifyingly so. The jungle felt alive in the worst way possible. Leaves rustled. Branches creaked. Every shadow seemed to hold a pair of glowing eyes. "Ravi, it's dangerous," an elder said. "That leopard could kill all of us." But Ravi didn't stop. He pushed through thorns, stumbling over roots. "He's alive," he kept shouting. "I know he's alive." Hours passed. The jungle grew darker as thick clouds covered the sun. Ravi's torch flickered as he bent over to inspect a track. Suddenly, a deep growl echoed. Everyone froze. The sound was so close that it seemed to vibrate in the air. A ripple of fear ran through the group. Then, from the trees, the leopard emerged. It stood on a thick branch, staring down at them with unblinking yellow eyes. In its jaws, they could see the faint, cloth-wrapped shape of the baby. The child wasn't moving. "My son!" Ravi screamed, his voice breaking. Before anyone could react, the leopard turned and leaped effortlessly to the ground, disappearing into the underbrush. "After it!" Ravi yelled. But the villagers hesitated. "It's leading us deeper," one man said, his voice trembling. "This is a trap." But Ravi didn't care. He ran after the leopard alone, his torchlight bouncing wildly as he pushed deeper into the jungle. "Wait, Ravi," someone shouted, but he was already gone. The jungle swallowed him whole. For what felt like hours, Ravi stumbled blindly through the trees. Thorns tore at his skin, roots caught his feet, but he didn't stop. His heart beat painfully in his chest. The jungle was silent now, too silent. Then, he heard it. A soft, familiar sound. A baby's cry. Ravi froze, his ears straining. The sound echoed faintly through the trees. It was his son. He was sure of it. He moved cautiously, holding his torch high. As he approached a clearing, he stopped dead in his tracks. There, lying in a bed of leaves, was his baby. The infant was unharmed, his cloth untouched. The leopard sat only a few feet away, its massive form partially hidden in the shadows. Its golden eyes stared at Ravi, unblinking and calm. Ravi felt his knees weaken. The leopard was protecting his son. But why? The clearing was a surreal sight, an impossible moment carved from the chaos of the jungle. Ravi stood frozen, his torch flickering weakly in his trembling hands. His son, barely a few weeks old, lay nestled in a bed of soft leaves as if placed there deliberately. And sitting no more than 10 feet away, with its golden eyes locked on Ravi, was the leopard. Ravi's mind swirled. The beast didn't look aggressive. It didn't snarl or move to attack. Instead, it watched him with an expression that seemed calm. Almost understanding. The baby let out another weak cry, breaking the silence. Ravi's heart clenched. His instincts screamed at him to rush forward and grab his son, but the leopard's presence held him back. A single wrong move could mean death, for him, for his child. "Why are you doing this?" Ravi whispered aloud, his voice shaking. The leopard tilted its head slightly, as though it understood him. Ravi swallowed hard, sweat dripping down his face. In his village, a leopard attack was a sign of doom, yet this felt different. The beast had taken his son, but hadn't harmed him. It had protected him, deliberately. Ravi took a cautious step forward. The leopard's ears twitched, but it didn't move. Another step. The torchlight cast long, flickering shadows across the clearing. Finally, he was close enough to see his son's face, peaceful, unharmed. Tears welled in his eyes. He bent down, his hands trembling as he reached for the baby. His fingers brushed the soft fabric, and at that moment, the leopard let out a low growl. Ravi froze. His breath caught in his throat as he looked up to meet the animal's gaze. It wasn't an aggressive sound, but it was a warning. The leopard rose slowly, its muscles rippling under its coat. Ravi's body screamed with tension. "What do you want?" he whispered, as though expecting an answer. For a long moment, the leopard just stared at him. Then, in a move that startled Ravi, the leopard turned its head and looked toward the dense jungle beyond the clearing. It looked back at Ravi, then toward the forest again, almost as if it were signaling him. Is it showing me something? Ravi thought, his pulse quickening. The baby let out a small whimper, breaking the tension. Ravi seized the moment, scooping his child into his arms. Relief washed over him like rain after a drought. I have you, my son. I have you. His voice cracked as tears streamed down his face. But his moment of relief was short-lived. The leopard stood and began walking slowly into the jungle, its massive paws barely making a sound on the earth. After a few steps, it stopped and turned to look back at Ravi. Its yellow eyes were unmistakable in the torchlight. It was waiting. Ravi's breath came in ragged gasps. He couldn't make sense of it. This leopard, this wild predator, had not only spared his child but now seemed to be guiding him. Was it leading him out? Away from danger? Or somewhere else entirely? Follow it, his instincts whispered. Against all logic, Ravi adjusted his son in his arms and began following the leopard. His every step was slow and cautious, his eyes fixed on the animal. The torch in his hand flickered weakly as though it, too, was afraid. The journey through the jungle. The jungle grew darker and denser the deeper they went. Ravi's senses were on edge. Every rustle of leaves made him flinch, but the leopard moved with grace, gliding silently between the trees. It would pause occasionally to look back at him, as if to make sure he was still following. Ravi whispered to his son, who remained curled in his arms, sleeping peacefully despite everything. You're safe, little one. Just hold on. After what felt like hours, Ravi noticed something strange. The jungle, once filled with ominous shadows and threatening sounds, felt quieter. Safer. It was as though the leopard's presence had warded off all other predators. Finally, the leopard stopped. Ravi halted as well, his torchlight revealing a small stream glistening in the faint moonlight. The leopard turned to face Ravi one last time. Its eyes softened, no longer predatory, but almost gentle. Ravi's breath hitched. He felt as though the creature was looking straight into his soul. The leopard let out a soft growl, one that sounded almost like a farewell. Then, with a graceful turn, it disappeared into the jungle's shadows, leaving Ravi and his son by the stream. Wait. Ravi whispered, but the leopard was gone. He stood there for a long moment, his son in his arms, the stream gurgling softly beside them. His mind struggled to comprehend what had just happened. This leopard, a creature of danger and death, had not only spared their lives, but led them to safety. Ravi looked down at his son, tears of relief spilling onto his cheeks. You're safe now, he whispered, his voice breaking. We're safe. In the stillness of the jungle, Ravi swore he could feel the leopard's presence lingering, like a silent guardian watching from the shadows. Back at the village. Hours later, Ravi stumbled back into the village, cradling his son tightly to his chest. The first rays of dawn were breaking over the mountains, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold. The villagers, who had been searching all night, gasped as they saw him approach. He's alive, someone shouted. Meena, her face streaked with tears, ran to Ravi, her cries breaking the morning silence. My baby! My baby! She collapsed to her knees as Ravi handed her their son. The crowd gathered around them, their faces filled with awe and disbelief. How did you survive? One man asked. How did you escape the leopard? Ravi looked toward the jungle, his voice soft. It didn't attack us. It saved us. The villagers exchanged shocked glances. What are you saying, Ravi? An elder asked. A leopard doesn't spare humans. Ravi shook his head, his eyes glistening. This one did. It led me through the jungle, away from danger. It watched over my son. A hush fell over the crowd. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, the village elder stepped forward, his face etched with wonder. Perhaps it wasn't just a leopard, he said quietly. Perhaps it was something more. A spirit. A guardian sent to protect the boy. Ravi looked down at his son, who slept peacefully in his mother's arms. Maybe, Ravi whispered, his voice filled with gratitude. Maybe it was. From that day on, the story of the guardian leopard spread like wildfire. People spoke of it with reverence, believing that the child must have been blessed, protected by forces beyond their understanding. And deep in the jungle, unseen and unheard, the leopard watched. Its golden eyes glimmered in the shadows, a silent guardian forever etched into the village's legend. The return of Ravi and his son from the jungle was nothing short of a miracle. The villagers welcomed them like a family saved from death itself. Meena didn't leave her son's side for hours, tears streaming down her face as she kissed his tiny forehead over and over. But while the village celebrated, whispers of awe and fear spread like wildfire. Why didn't the leopard harm them? Could it really be a spirit, a guardian sent for the boy? Or is this a curse? Though some were overjoyed, others were wary. Leopards were predators, and predators didn't spare humans. Superstition hung over the village like a heavy fog, and Ravi found himself. For the next few days, Ravi and Meena tried to return to normal life. But the shadows of that night lingered. Ravi couldn't forget the leopard's piercing gaze, its strange calmness, and its silent guidance. At night, he would sit outside his hut and stare into the dark jungle, half expecting to see the glowing yellow eyes watching him again. "Why do you keep looking?" Meena asked one night, her voice breaking. "You're home. He's safe." "I know," Ravi replied softly, staring into the shadows. "But that leopard, it was trying to tell me something. I just don't know what." "Ravi, please," Meena begged. "The village already thinks something unnatural happened. They're afraid. Don't go searching for answers that don't exist." But Ravi couldn't let it go. The encounter haunted him. The villagers, too, grew restless. Sightings of the leopard increased near the forest edge. Goats and cattle began to disappear in the night. Fear gripped the people like a vice. "It's the same leopard," one man shouted during a village meeting. "It spared Ravi's son, but now it's hunting us." "It's a curse," another cried. "No." Ravi interrupted, rising to his feet. "That leopard is not hunting us. It protected my son. There's more to this than we understand." The village elder's voice silenced the crowd. "Whatever it is," he said slowly, "this cannot continue. If the leopard is coming closer, we must drive it back before someone else is harmed." Ravi felt the weight of the words. The same creature that had saved his son was now seen as a threat. He had to act before the villagers hunted it down. The next morning, Ravi made a decision that would change everything. He would return to the jungle, alone, to find the leopard and uncover the truth. "Don't do this, Ravi," Meena begged, clutching his arm. "You don't owe that creature anything." "She saved our son," Ravi said softly, determination in his eyes. "I can't let them kill her." Carrying nothing but a torch, a cloth of food, and a small blade, Ravi set off into the jungle. The sun was high, but the dense canopy swallowed the light, leaving the forest damp and shadowed. Each step felt heavier as Ravi pushed deeper into the wilderness. The leopard had brought him to safety once, but now he was searching for it willingly, trusting a predator. Hours passed. Ravi followed the faint trails left by animals, his eyes scanning the jungle for any sign of movement. Suddenly, he heard a rustle, a low growl echoing from the trees. Ravi froze, his heart pounding. "It's you, isn't it?" he whispered. From the shadows, the leopard appeared. It moved slowly, deliberately, its golden eyes locked on him. Ravi held his breath as the animal approached. Fear gripped him, but he didn't run. The leopard stopped a few feet away, its body still and calm. Ravi dropped to his knees, his voice trembling. "I don't know why you saved my son," he whispered. "But I know you're not the monster they think you are." For a moment, the leopard simply stared at him. Then, to Ravi's shock, it turned and began walking away. It paused once to look back at him as if to say, "Follow me." Ravi hesitated, but only for a moment. He knew the leopard was leading him somewhere. The leopard guided Ravi through dense foliage and over rocky hills. Finally, they reached a small, hidden clearing. Ravi's breath caught. In the center of the clearing lay a leopard cub, tiny and frail, its breathing shallow. The mother leopard, the one that had taken his son, moved to stand protectively beside it. Ravi understood everything in an instant. The mother leopard hadn't taken his son out of cruelty. She had likely mistaken the baby's cries for her own cubs. She had acted on instinct, carrying Ravi's child to safety the way she would her own. And now, her cub was dying. Ravi's heart broke as he watched the mother nudge the cub gently, as if willing it to move. Despite being a predator, she was just a mother, no different from Meena, no different from him. The leopard turned to Ravi, her yellow eyes filled with something he couldn't describe. Was it desperation? Pleading? Trust? Ravi knelt beside the cub, his farmer's hands trembling. He had no medical skills, but he couldn't leave the helpless creature to die. "It's okay," he whispered, his voice soft. "I'll help." Using water from a nearby stream, Ravi cleaned the cub's mouth and nose, clearing away dirt and debris. He crushed herbs he knew to be safe and applied them gently to the cub's frail body, hoping to ease its pain. The mother leopard watched every move, her body tense but trusting. Hours passed. Ravi worked tirelessly, refusing to give up. Finally, the cub stirred, letting out a faint, ragged sound. The mother leopard let out a low, rumbling purr, a sound of relief. Ravi sat back, his body aching, but his heart light. "You're safe now," he whispered. "You'll be okay." The leopard met his gaze one last time. In that moment, Ravi felt a bond, a silent understanding between two parents who had fought to protect their children. When Ravi returned to the village the next morning, he was changed. He told the villagers everything, the truth about the leopard, its dying cub, and its act of mistaken instinct. At first, the people didn't believe him. Fear and superstition clouded their minds. But then, the village elder spoke. "This is no monster," he said firmly. "It is a mother, like any of us. We must respect her." Slowly, the villagers' fear turned to awe. Ravi's story spread beyond the village, carried by travelers and traders. The tale of the guardian leopard, the mother who protected a child that wasn't hers, became a legend. Weeks later, as Ravi worked in his field, he felt a familiar presence. He looked up to see the leopard standing at the forest's edge, her cub, now healthy and strong, by her side. For a long moment, they stared at each other. Then the leopard turned and disappeared into the jungle, her cub following closely behind. Ravi smiled, a tear slipping down his cheek. "Thank you," he whispered. Days turned into weeks, and the legend of the guardian leopard spread far and wide. Outsiders began arriving in the village, poachers, hunters, and curious travelers, each with their own purpose. Some came to see the mystical beast that villagers spoke of with reverence. Others came to exploit the story for personal gain. "Whoever captures that leopard alive will earn a fortune," a stranger whispered in the local market. The news filled Ravi with dread. He knew the jungle wasn't safe anymore, not for the leopard, not for her cub. Greed had replaced awe, and a predator that once saved his child was now hunted as a trophy. That night, Ravi sat with Meena under the stars. She noticed the worry etched across his face. "You're thinking about her, aren't you?" she asked softly. Ravi nodded. "They'll come for her, Meena. For the cub too. We can't let that happen." "But what can we do?" Ravi didn't answer. His heart felt heavy, weighed down by a responsibility he hadn't asked for, but couldn't ignore. One morning, jeeps and armed men rumbled into the village. The hunters wore camouflage and carried rifles, their faces hard with determination. Ravi watched from a distance as the village elder tried to reason with them. "This is not a beast you can hunt," the elder warned. "She is a protector, a mother. You must leave her in peace." The lead hunter scoffed. It's just a leopard, old man. A rare one, sure, but an animal all the same. We're taking it. Ravi clenched his fists, anger boiling inside him. He knew these men wouldn't listen to reason. The leopard had no chance. That evening, as the hunters set up camp at the jungle's edge, Ravi made a decision, one that could cost him everything. He would go into the jungle, find the leopard, and lead her and the cub deeper into the wilderness, far beyond the hunter's reach. Before he left, Meena confronted him. Ravi, you can't, she cried. Those men are dangerous. If they find you. I owe her, Meena, Ravi interrupted, his voice steady. She saved our son. Now it's my turn to save her. Meena's eyes filled with tears. She understood there was no stopping him. Promise me you'll come back. I promise, he whispered, holding her close. For you. For our son. As darkness fell over the village, Ravi slipped into the jungle, torch in hand. The jungle was alive with sounds, the chirping of insects, the calls of nocturnal birds, but Ravi's mind was focused. He moved swiftly, scanning the dense foliage for any sign of the leopard. He knew time was running out. Suddenly, a soft rustling caught his attention. Ravi turned and froze. The leopard was there, her golden eyes reflecting the torchlight. Beside her, the cub peeked out cautiously. Relief flooded through Ravi. You need to leave, he whispered, his voice trembling with urgency. They're coming for you. I'll take you somewhere safe. The mother leopard tilted her head, as though understanding him. Ravi turned and began walking, hoping she would follow. To his relief, the leopard and her cub fell into step behind him, moving like shadows through the underbrush. For hours, Ravi led them deeper into the jungle. The path grew rougher, the air colder, but he didn't stop. Finally, they reached a remote valley shrouded by thick trees and mist, a place untouched by humans. This is where you'll be safe, Ravi whispered, turning to the leopard. No one will find you here. The mother leopard stared at him for a long moment, her yellow eyes softening. Then, as if to say thank you, she let out a low, gentle purr. Ravi smiled, tears filling his eyes. Go on, he said. You're free now. The leopard turned, nudging her cub forward, and disappeared into the mist, leaving Ravi alone in the silent jungle. But the silence didn't last long. A gunshot rang out. Ravi's blood ran cold. He spun around, his heart pounding. Through the trees, torchlights flickered as the hunters approached. They had tracked him. There he is, someone shouted. Ravi broke into a sprint, his feet pounding the earth as he ran through the jungle. Branches lashed against his skin, but he didn't stop. He had to draw the hunters away from the valley. Gunshots echoed behind him, bullets tearing through leaves. Stop him, the lead hunter bellowed. Ravi stumbled into a clearing, his chest heaving. Suddenly, he saw the hunters emerge from the shadows, their rifles aimed at him. You're protecting it, aren't you? The lead hunter sneered. Tell us where it is. Ravi stood tall, his voice steady, despite the fear in his chest. You'll never find her. The hunter raised his rifle. Ravi braced himself, his mind flashing to Meena, his son, and the promise he had made. But before the hunter could fire, a deafening roar split the air. The hunters froze. Ravi's eyes widened as the leopard burst from the trees, her golden coat glinting in the moonlight. She was a blur of fury, snarling, growling, and striking with lightning speed. The hunters panicked. Shoot it! Shoot it! But the leopard was too fast. She darted through the clearing, knocking weapons from their hands and sending the men scrambling. Her cub emerged behind her, growling in a small but fierce voice. Ravi watched in awe as the hunters fled, their shouts echoing through the jungle. Within moments, the clearing was silent once more. The leopard turned to Ravi, her sides heaving. They stared at each other, predator and human, bound by an unspoken trust. Thank you, Ravi whispered. The leopard let out a low purr, before disappearing back into the jungle, her cub following closely behind. When Ravi returned to the village, exhausted and bruised, he found the villagers waiting for him. Meena ran to him, tears streaming down her face. "You're alive," she cried, clutching him tightly. Ravi held her close, his heart full of gratitude. "It's over," he whispered. "She's safe now." The village elder approached, his eyes filled with pride. "You risked your life for that creature," he said softly. "Why?" Ravi smiled faintly. "Because she risked hers for my son. She showed me that even the fiercest predator can protect what it loves." The elder nodded, his voice heavy with wisdom. "Perhaps there is more to the bond between man and beast than we will ever understand." Years later, the story of Ravi and the guardian leopard became legend. Travelers from distant lands spoke of a man who had earned the trust of a predator, and of a leopard who became a guardian. Ravi's son grew up hearing the tale, always looking to the forest with wonder. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, he swore he saw golden eyes glinting from the shadows, a silent watcher, still protecting the village from afar. And deep in the jungle, where humans dared not tread, the leopard roamed free, her cub now grown, carrying on the legacy of her mother. The bond between man and beast had been tested, and it had endured. In a world of chaos, their story remained a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the unlikeliest of places, trust and kindness could prevail. Years passed, and the jungle remained untouched, its canopy shielding secrets known only to those who dared to look closer. Ravi's tale became more than a story, it became a lesson passed down through generations. In the village square, elders would gather children around the old banyan tree, where shadows danced like whispers of the past. They would begin the tale as they always did. Long ago, a leopard entered the village and took a newborn child. But what happened next was something no one could have imagined. The children would listen, wide-eyed, their imaginations painting the jungle in vivid colors. They would ask the same questions each time. Was the leopard real? Did it truly save the baby? What happened to the leopard and her cub? And the elders would smile, their voices steady with wisdom. Sometimes, life teaches us lessons in the most unexpected ways. Fear turns to understanding, enemies to friends, and the wildest creatures to protectors. That is the truth of the jungle. When Ravi's son, now a young man, came of age, he approached his father one morning as the sun spilled golden light across their fields. Ravi, older now with gray streaking his hair, looked up with curiosity. "Father," the boy said, his voice strong yet thoughtful, "will you take me to the place where you last saw her, the leopard?" Ravi paused, his weathered hands stilling. For years, he had told the boy the story, watching fascination and reverence fill his young heart. Now, the boy wanted to see the jungle for himself. "Are you ready?" Ravi asked quietly. The boy nodded. "You always said the jungle has its own truths. I want to find them." Together, they set off into the forest, just as Ravi had done all those years ago. The jungle hadn't changed, its thick, verdant walls hummed with life, and its mysteries hung heavy in the air. Birds called out warnings, monkeys leaped through the branches, and the undergrowth seemed to whisper secrets. Ravi's son marveled at it all. "It feels alive, father. Like it's watching us." Ravi smiled faintly. "It always is." Hours later, they reached the remote valley, the sacred place where the leopard had once led him. It looked untouched, a world apart from the noise of men. The boy knelt at the edge of the clearing, his gaze softening. "Do you think they're still here?" "Maybe," Ravi said, his voice low. "Or maybe their spirits linger in places like this, where man and beast learn to trust each other." The boy stayed quiet, listening to the sounds of the jungle. Then, from the shadows, a rustling emerged. Ravi's heart skipped a beat as he turned. There, standing on the edge of the clearing, was a leopard. Her golden coat gleamed in the dappled light, her muscles rippling with strength. But it wasn't her that drew Ravi's attention, it was the smaller figure at her side. A young cub. The boy's breath caught. "It's them, the next generation." Ravi nodded, tears filling his eyes. It wasn't the same leopard he had once encountered, but it didn't matter. The bond, the silent promise between man and beast, had been passed on. The leopard stared at them for a long moment before turning, disappearing into the shadows of the jungle. Her cub paused, looking back once, as if to say thank you, before following its mother. The boy turned to Ravi, his face glowing with wonder. "It's true, isn't it? Everything you told me." "Yes," Ravi said softly. "And now you've seen it with your own eyes." The moral of the story. Back in the village, Ravi sat with his son beneath the same banyan tree where the story had been told so many times before. This time, it was the boy who spoke. "The jungle taught us something, didn't it?" the boy asked. Ravi smiled, his eyes reflecting both wisdom and peace. "Yes. That trust can bloom in the most unlikely of places. That the fiercest creatures can also show the deepest love. And that sometimes, nature knows more about kindness than we do." The boy looked up at the ancient branches stretching toward the sky. "Do you think people will ever understand that?" Ravi's voice was steady. "Some will. And it's our job to tell them. To share the story." From that day on, the tale of the guardian leopard wasn't just a story of survival. It was a story of hope, of trust, and of the silent understanding that bridges the gap between humans and the natural world. Years later, long after Ravi had passed on, his son stood at the forest's edge with his own children. The jungle was still there, vast and alive, its mysteries as deep as ever. "Do you see that?" he whispered, pointing to the shadows. Golden eyes gleamed softly, watching them from afar. The children gasped, their hearts pounding with excitement. "It's her," the father said, smiling. "She's still watching over us." And as the family turned to leave, the golden eyes lingered, a silent promise passed through generations, a bond that would never be broken. In a world so often divided by fear and misunderstanding, the guardian leopard's story remained a light in the darkness, reminding all who heard it that trust, love, and kindness can exist, even in the most unexpected places. And somewhere, deep in the jungle, the leopard roamed free, carrying the legend forward with every silent step. The fiercest hearts can hold the deepest love, and the wildest places can teach us the most human truths.